In the news. Seriously? I'm fixing to play you a clip that I saw last night on social media. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I know these things are going on and getting worse. But this is clearly an agenda. It is not the truth. It is a pack of lies. It has only tiny, tiny fragments of the truth in it. But moreover, it is an agenda. So I'm not going to give a big lead in on this. I'm going to let this video speak for itself, and then I will give a commentary afterwards, and I will be posting some things on the screen as this video plays. So I'm going to play this video now for you, and let the person in it speak for themselves.
Facebook, who commented hashtag all lives matter after deeming the protest she attended a hateful event Martin Luther King would have been ashamed of.
Okay, hold up for 1 minute here. First of all, Dr. Martin Luther King would have been ashamed of these goings-on in this country right now. It is an overreaction. It is part of an agenda, and it is not justified. And to prove that Dr. Martin Luther King advocated nonviolence as the answer, why don't we, instead of listening to this woman, listen to the words of Dr. King himself?
Gandhi, Dr. King, dramatized and defined the technique of nonviolence, and yet he also said that the only alternative to fear is violence, and that if that were the alternative, he would have to choose violence. Do you subscribe to that judgment of Gandhi, or would you disavow violence under any conditions?
Well, I think I would have to somewhat interpret Gandhi at this point. I don't think he was setting forth violence as an alternative. I think he was emphasizing, or rather trying to refute an all too prevalent fallacy, and that is that the persons who use the method of nonviolence are actually the weak persons, persons who don't have the weapons of violence, persons who are afraid. And I think that is what Gandhi was attempting to refute. Now, in that instance, I would agree with Gandhi that if the only alternative to violence, to fear, is violence and vice versa, then I would say fight. But it isn't the only alternative. And that is one point that Gandhi was trying to bring out. It seems to me that there are three ways that oppressed people can deal with their oppression.
What are they, Dr. King?
Well, one is to rise up in open violence, in physical violence. And some persons have used that method, persons who have been oppressed. But I think the danger of that method is its futility. I feel that violence creates many more social problems than it solves.
May I interrupt you there, Dr. King? There are today certainly people who are forced to endure a kind of injustice that neither you nor even Gandhi in his time had ever seen. For example, would you regard the martyrs of Hungary's rebellion a year ago as misguided men in having used violence?
I admire freedom fighters wherever they are, but I still believe that nonviolence is the strongest approach. I think that would apply to the Hungarian situation also. I don't think it's limited to a particular locality. I think it should apply in every situation in the world where individuals seek to break loose from the bondage of colonialism or from some totalitarian regime or from the system which we confront in America.
You truly believe, then, that nonviolence is the sole, the universal answer to injustice and oppression?
Very definitely. Very definitely. I feel that nonviolence, organized nonviolent resistance is the most powerful weapon that oppressed people can use in breaking loose from the bondage of oppression. Now, the other method that one might use is that of resignation or acquiescence. But I think that is just as bad as violence, because non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as is cooperation with good.
You make a difference, a distinction between passive resistance and nonviolent resistance, is that it?
Well, I think that can be something of a semantical problem. If passive resistance means just passively accepting violence or injustice, if it means cowardice and stagnant passivity, then there is a difference, because nonviolent resistance does resist. It is dynamically active. It is passive physically, but it is strongly active spiritually.
In a sense, would you regard it as moving into the Christian philosophy too? You mean the doctrine of turn the other cheek to regard as positive rather than passive?
I think it is positive. I think very definitely, if it is used properly and accepted with the proper attitude, it is a very strong method. It is a method of the strong man, not the weak man.
Doctor,
Call it an overreaction. Call it a riot, a violent protest. Call it everything but justified. Ask us to be polite, to stay calm, to voice grief with respect while our brothers' bodies are laid out on the street, sounding the alarm. Our bodies are threats well before they are human, and you still want to know the source of our rage. You fear our rage will happen across a storefront window, will happen across a corporate office. You fear the glass shards glittering under police helicopters. We fear your rage will drag our children into the streets and dance in the red pool beaming under street lamps. I cannot decorate this pain for you. I cannot make a beautiful homage. I can't invoke hope in prayer. I don't know how to make you understand the occupation your ignorance has blinded you.
You know, it's funny that you mention hope and prayer. Hope and prayer to what? It doesn't sound like to me that you understand the God of the Bible. And you say our ignorance has blinded us to what is going on. Well, my dear, what about your ignorance? What about what you're supporting that you don't even know? You get on here and claim that you're terrified that you're going to be pulled out into the streets into pools of red blood, but have you looked at the crime statistics lately, young lady? Do you understand that the majority of black deaths in this country, that is to say murder, are caused by fellow blacks? Have you even bothered to look at crime statistics nationwide over the past, let's say, dozen years or so? Probably not, because you're probably about 21 or 22 years old and think that you've got the world figured out and know everything. But you don't even know who it is that's supporting this movement that you're pushing as an agenda. You don't even know who is supplying this narrative. I assure you, it's not people of your own color. And it's certainly not true Americans of the American spirit. No, it is the selfsame sons of Cain, or the Illuminati, or the Bilderbergers, or whatever you want to call them. See, there are things in history which you obviously have not been taught and obviously do not understand. Some of which being that the Black Lives Matter movement, the Black Panthers, the NAACP, and many other such groups are funded by rich businessmen such as George Soros, such as the Rockefellers. You have no idea who is even pulling the strings, dear, because you haven't got a clue. You stand up here and speak these swelling words of how terrible your race has had it, Why don't you fly overseas to one of these third world countries, maybe even the nation which brought forth your people, Africa? Why don't you go over there and try seeing how bad things really can be? You live in the freest, greatest nation in the world, and you're unappreciative of it. You're going to claim here in the next few minutes that you're being genocidally wiped out, which is a damnable lie. Do you realize, ma'am, that you live in a country where the president is black, where we have a congressional black caucus, that this nation is the most multicultural melting pot on earth, and yet you still find reasons to whine and cry every time there's an altercation between a police officer and a black person? Why is that? If you check the statistics, you will see that a black person who is murdered is 10 times more likely to be murdered by a fellow black person than by a white person, or a Latino person, or an Asian person, or a cop, all put together. But that would take you doing a little fact checking rather than getting on here and making this video. Now, this video is presented as though you made it all yourself, but the complex photography in this video and the scenes that are put into it shows that this video was manufactured. It was manufactured probably by some action group, some community action group, or some community action front to play the same old game of the race card, to point back and say, oh, woe is me, I have been so oppressed. I live in the freest nation in this world, where blacks have the highest standard of living that they have ever had at any time during history. And yet all you do is whine and complain and moan all the more.
That black bodies are stopped and frisked so often we might as well call our cities war zones. Every street corner a checkpoint. Violence is not always a dead body. Violence can be a pat down in broad daylight because you share the same hue as suspect. Violence is indicting the man who filmed the killing of Eric Garner, but not the officer that illegally choked the life out of his body while 5 others assisted in the arrest. Violence is convincing a jury that he caused his own death, that had he not been overweight, he would have survived. Violence is needing 6 officers to arrest 1 unarmed, non-violent man in the first place.
Tell me, miss, how many police officers do you know of that have ESP? That's extrasensory perception. How many do you know that automatically know when they go into a high-risk neighborhood and confront someone that they're unarmed and that they're nonviolent? I would dare say you don't know any. And as a matter of fact, there aren't any. Police officers take their life into their hands every time they go out on a call, whether it's in a high-risk area or out on the highways and byways of this country. Why does it take 6 officers to take 1 person down? Well, let me ask you a question, miss. Would you go into a high-risk area? Even a high-risk area of your own people. Let's say, would you go trudging through Harlem? I know a white person would not, because they would probably be beat to death or killed. So, why does it take 6 officers to arrest somebody? Have you seen the kinds of things that happen? I mean, there's plenty of videos here on YouTube of what happens whenever cops are called into a slum or a hood to arrest somebody. Usually they're piled on by a bunch of residents, thrown rocks at, their police cars are burned, and a number of other violent things happen. So, no, perhaps it's not a necessity to have 6 officers to arrest 1 man. And perhaps there are even cops, and matter of fact, I'm sure there are. You know, as I've stated in many other lectures, I am no fan of the police state. However, you get so angry whenever you're stereotyped or profiled, yet what are you doing in this video? You're stereotyping and profiling not only white people, but police officers. For every 1 police officer that there is in this country that abuses the badge and the authority of the badge, there are 20,000 that serve honorably, that get out and protect people just like you, that rush into fires, that put themselves at risk to save people like you. But you would have everyone believe that all cops are bad, and some of your next words coming up will prove my point exactly. When you get to the point where they've traded in their hoods for police uniforms. Again, you're a young lady who's not even out of her braces yet, and you think you know everything. And literally, you don't know squat. The fact of the matter is, it would appear that you have been indoctrinated. No doubt you attend college and have been taught by some countercultural radical who spews hate out of his mouth. You probably listened to speeches by Louis Farrakhan or Professor Kumau Cambone or Jeremiah Wright, who consistently call for the genocide and death of the white race. And you have no problem with that. That doesn't bother you in the slightest. Because it's revenge you seek. Revenge for things that happened before you were even born. You think you have reason to be mad, but you have no reason to be mad. After all these years of the struggle, here you are, posting videos. Now, how can you do that in a country that is so hateful to black people? You need to get your priorities straight, young lady. You need to start using your mind to think with rather than to be a sponge for soaking up what the indoctrinates teach you and what the narrative tells you and what the agenda pushes you to say in manufactured anger. You don't even know why you're angry.
How can we accept a government that only applies the law to fill prisons with black bodies? How can we accept a government that permits and perpetuates violence against its people? The state traded white hoods for police uniforms, and you want our marches peaceful. You want us calm. You want us quiet.
First of all, you're anything but calm, and you're anything but quiet. You get out and block highways, never knowing who you might be preventing from getting somewhere, maybe to an honest day's work, or preventing an ambulance from carrying one of your own kinsmen maybe to the hospital. You don't care about stuff like that. You stop trains, you protest, you burn down your own neighborhoods, you burn down your own cities, you loot and you pillage, and then you sit here and try to justify it. And then you have the gall to say, how can we accept a government that is against its own people? Well, in that you're partially right. The government is against its own people. The United States of America is now fighting against its own people. However, when you say its own people, you mean your particular race. Has it occurred to you, ma'am, that the Department of Justice head is a black man, Eric Holder? Has it occurred to you that the President of the United States is a black man, or at least half black, but he identifies more with black than with white? Now, how can this be in such a hateful, racist country? And then you compare the cops, the police officers that get out and put their lives at risk every day for piss poor money, to the Ku Klux Klan. I got news for you, young lady. This is not the 1930s, the 1940s, the 1950s, or even the 1960s. There are no lynchings of black people now, and hangings. There are none of these things that you are claiming. And again, statistics show, as far as what you said about filling prisons with black bodies. Oh, I'm quite sure that everybody in prison is totally innocent and none of them deserve to be there, right? People don't get arrested for nothing in this country. And when they do, they bring big, huge lawsuits. And they get millions of dollars. So this whole idea that you're trying to push, again, is part of the greater agenda to divide people. To divide Americans. To divide Christians. Again, you don't even know who it is that's empowering you. And yet here you have a voice. You've got freedom of speech as guaranteed by the Constitution to get on here and post this crapical nonsense that you're talking. And how can that be in such a racist nation as you claim and make out that this is? It cannot be. So that means one of two things. It means either you're right and everyone else is wrong, or you're an ignorant young woman who has been indoctrinated to believe this total bullshit. And that's exactly what it is. It's total bullshit. You are merely a parrot, repeating what you have heard and what you have been taught. Obviously, you have not done the fact-checking, as I alluded to earlier. It is not only whites or blacks or Asians or Latinos that are in prison. They're all there. And they're all there for doing a little thing called committing crimes. Committing crimes. That's why they're in prison. And yes, there is the odd case that happens in an imperfect world where innocent people go to jail. And there's nothing that can be done about that because this world is imperfect. And there are far too many lawyers arguing far too many things. But then again, there is revolving door justice, where people of all colors get out of jail after doing horrid crimes like murder, like pedophilia, like animal cruelty, like many other things. But none of that concerns you. You're simply concerned with one thing, your race. You're not concerned about anyone else. You're not concerned about the integrity of the country. You try to justify lawlessness. How much credibility can you really have to get up and make such a speech and try to justify rioting, looting, burning down of buildings, beating innocents that had nothing to do with whatever it is you're angry about on what particular day that you're angry? And as a matter of fact, if you will check your statistics, young lady, you will see that more white people die at the hands of police officers than black people. But then again, like I said, that would take some fact checking, instead of just getting up and making a rant because you think you have something to be angry about.
Stop asking us to bite our tongues when we cannot guarantee our siblings safe passage to the corner store. Yet you still want to talk about looting. Want to police our protest tactics. You want me to know that you would have cared about the tombstones this nation is hoarding if we hadn't blocked traffic.
Yes, that is exactly right. I still want to talk about looting. You know why? Because that is a criminal act. Looting, destruction of property, beating of innocents, burning of buildings are all crimes. They're all crimes. They are uncivilized. They are lawless. And you speak of tactics? Did I not just hear you say that you did not want your streets to be like a war zone with checkpoints? You speak of tactics as if this was a war. It's not a war. All it is an agenda. And it's agenda that, again, you do not realize who is even pushing you to this. You can't guarantee your siblings' passage to the store. Well, who can in this day and age, ma'am? Who can guarantee that? This is a world where we import radicals from overseas. And you know what? Largely what you're talking about happens in bigger cities like Chicago. Not that it doesn't happen in urban and rural areas as well. But you know what? The world is what you make of it, dear. And if you get on here and try to justify your lawlessness as some kind of righteous fight, then you're no better than what you claim to be fighting against. And hoarding tombstones? Hoarding tombstones? Seriously? How do you expect to have any credibility with that kind of nonsense? Oh, it's some big, vast conspiracy against black people, isn't it? That's what you'd like everyone to believe, and that's what your puppet masters, which are helping you to produce this video and pushing this narrative, want everyone to believe too. Again, the purpose is division. To divide the United States by race, by creed, by politics, by anything. You know what Christ said about a house divided? He said it cannot stand. And yet here you are speaking lies as though they are the gospel truth from your biased and skewed, narrow point of view, as if you hold the moral high ground and have all the knowledge in the world at your tender young age. You have some growing up to do.
You think stopping trains is silly. You want us to march peacefully, to replicate your disfigured perception of Martin, but Dr. King said, riots are the voices of the unheard, and you will hear us now.
Oh, believe me, I have heard you. We have heard you. And it's the same old nonsensical, whining rhetoric that has been going on for about the last 30 to 40 years. Only it's escalated now in these times. With Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and many others who love to push the idea of hate for gain. And you say that my view of Martin Luther King is a disfigured perception? Did you, by any chance, take the time to listen to any of his speeches? How about that clip I just played? You want me to play some more? I mean, I can. There's plenty of speeches on YouTube where Dr. Martin Luther King stood up and said that peace was the answer. Peaceful resistance. Not looting, not pillaging, not killing, not beating, not burning down of buildings. peaceful resistance. But you don't want peaceful resistance, do you? No, you don't. You want violence. You want retribution. You want revenge for things that happened long before your lifetime ever began. You want the white man to pay for the sins of their fathers. Well, I got news for you. There's quite a lot of us, young lady, who have been on this earth a lot longer than you have and had to have endured this nonsense over and over and over, year after year after year, whining, moan, play the race card, play the race card, play the race card, over events that happened over 150 years ago. Speaking of slavery. Well, you know what? Many of us did not even have ancestors who owned slaves. And certainly none of us were alive during those times. But that makes no difference to you, because you want your reparations, your retribution. This country has been kinder to the African American race, which brings me to another point. You demand on being called African American rather than American. You know, it's not good enough to just be called American. I don't identify myself as a Scotch American or an Irish American or an Italian American or a hyphenated anything American. I am purely an American, a red-blooded American citizen. But not you. Oh no. You're an African American. You're a word of separation. A word that separates you from being a regular American. So that you can get up here and make silly rants like this. And then you claim that we have a disfigured perception of Martin Luther King. The man's own words speak for themselves, young lady. I suggest you go and listen to him rather than, say, Louis Farrakhan or Kumail Cambone or Jeremiah Wright or any of 100 other or 1,000 other black activists of the Black Panthers or Black Lives Matter movement, who, once again, are telling you to be angry, yet you know not why. Oh, you think you know why. You think you've got reason to stand up here and you feel like you've got something to ratify and make right. When you live in the freest, best nation in the world. Again, I invite you to go overseas, to where they're chopping the heads off Christians, to where women are treated like dogs, to where if you spoke out on a video like you're doing here, you would be stoned to death or beaten with a whip. You don't know how good you've got it here. You're a spoiled little brat, is what you are. You've been raised and drunken on American freedoms, and then you have the audacity to turn around and speak against the nation which has given you the freedoms, as if there's some kind of big conspiracy to kill your people off, when you support Planned Parenthood, and I know you do, as all liberal progressives do. And Planned Parenthood gets rid of millions of your race before they're even born. And you remain quiet while black-on-black crime happens. But you've got plenty to say if a white police officer shoots a black man, yet you feel no pity for a police officer that gets gunned down in cold blood. You've got a skewed and narrowed view which has been finely honed and finely tuned by your indoctrinators. And it has certainly screwed up your young mind, and it's a shame. Because a mind is a terrible thing to waste. And yours has been wasted on this nonsense, and the belief in this nonsense. You have a few bad things happen, and you want to claim that the entire country is corrupt. Well, it is corrupt, but not in the way that you claim, because your claim falls along racial lines only. Again, you're not concerned with freedom of speech. You're not concerned with the Second Amendment. You're not concerned with people that burn the American flag, the flag that gives you freedom. No. You're considered or considerate only of your skin color and how you think that you have suffered. You have not suffered. It's too bad you don't have a time machine where you could go back to the real times of suffering of your people and see what it was really like. Then you wouldn't feel so bad about things today. And you might wake up to the reality that, like I said earlier, the world is what you make of it. And as for stereotyping and profiling, you know what? You're doing plenty of it in this video, but there's also an old saying, an old adage. If you do not do stereotypical things, then you cannot be stereotyped. If you do not do profilable things, then you cannot be profiled. And you know, the media, the mainstream media, paints a very poor picture of black people in this country. Yet they are your liberals, your progressives. They're supported by all the groups that you love, such as your Black Panthers, your NAACP, your Black Lives Matter movement. And yes, I did say Black Lives Matter that time. Because all this is that you're putting out is pure propaganda. It's propagandization. You use tiny little fragments of truth, things that happened in history. Some of them may be unsavory, some of them may be unjust, but then you condemn all for the actions of a few. Yet, if the same is done to you, you cry foul, and you cry it all the more. No, ma'am, we don't have a disfigured perception of what Dr. Martin Luther King stood for. Again, his words speak for themselves. I suggest you go and listen to one of his many speeches here on YouTube and clarify for yourself what the man actually said, what the man actually stood for, instead of believing what people tell you that he stood for.
It is not enough for you to hold our dead in your prayers, to wish us love and light. I get the sentiment, but it won't keep my kin from becoming ghosts. I am not interested in resignations or remorse. I don't want apologies. I don't want your guilt. I don't want your tears. I don't want insistence on how not racist you are. I don't want to know how many black friends you have when you won't even risk the discomfort of calling out your own classmates. You just don't get it, do you?
Oh, yes, dear, I get it perfectly. You're indoctrinated. You think that you stand on some kind of moral high ground, elevated on a pedestal of righteousness, when literally you're standing here trying to justify lawlessness. And you say, you won't even risk the discomfort of calling out your own classmates. Tell me, miss, when was the last time you risked the discomfort of speaking out against black-on-black crime? I haven't heard you say anything about that. Or how about black-on-white crime? Haven't heard you say anything about that either. Quite frankly, what you are doing is nothing more than once again propagandizing and hypocritically making a bunch of statements which no doubt you are believed and have been programmed to believe, but that are utter nonsense. You take a few examples and you make a mountain out of a molehill. That's about what this amounts to. And I am indeed so relieved that you don't want my guilt or my tears, because I have none for you, with concerns to what you're talking about here. Your video makes it clear to what agenda you're pushing, to the narrative that you're propagandizing. Enough said about that.
You've never lived out the aftermath. The empty seat at the dinner table. The now widowed mother with 6 mouths to feed. My kin are being sent to heaven well before God has requested their return. And you want to know why Malcolm called whiteness the devil.
Oh, spare me, would you? I've never lived out the empty seat at a dinner table? Oh my God, really? You mean to tell me that blacks are the only ones who ever die on this planet? You know, my old man, my dad, died when I was 14 years old. I lived with an empty dinner table chair for many, many years. And I found that hard to get over. And you say your kin are being sent to heaven long before God has requested their return. And as you show that picture, you put up a picture, or excuse me, as you say that sentence, you put up a picture of Michael Brown. Well, Michael Brown made the decision to rob the store that he robbed so that the police were called. And then Michael Brown made the decision to charge a police officer with a drawn gun and try to get his gun away from him, which is why Michael Brown is dead. So don't try posting pictures of Michael Brown and getting me to feel sorry for you. The earth is far better off without his light being here. The least thing we need on this planet is more criminals that disregard the law. And I know that you would have preferred for the store owner to be quiet and for the cop to not do anything and just let Michael Brown walk in there and shove him around and steal cigars or whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, just so he would still be alive. But the fact is, we do have laws in this country, and the fact is that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So Michael Brown charged a police officer, and yes, he is now dead. Unfortunate for his family, unfortunate for many people, unfortunate for this nation to have to keep listening to it. But don't try to get pity out of me for that. And as far as Malcolm X saying that whites are the devil, well, there again, consider your source. What was Malcolm X? Well, he was a Muslim. And he was in league and partnership with Louis Farrakhan, who probably had him murdered if the truth be known, because he started taking a different point of view. As well as Muhammad Mumia, or whatever his name was. See, that's the difference between knowing history and not knowing history, young lady. So, you know, this whole idea that you are trying to push is, like I have stated from the beginning, it's a bunch of propaganda. It's a bunch of half-stitched together spins on the truth. And it's a concoction of lies, illustrated in this video. And at the end of this video, you're going to claim that what is happening is genocide. I don't think so. But we'll let the video play on.
All lives will matter when Black lives matter. How many more bodies will be enough evidence? How many videos of our last words? How many more must there be for you to finally call this a genocide?
A genocide? Really? A genocide? With all due respect, young lady, you have no idea what a genocide is. What happened to the people in Europe during the 1930s and World War II, that was genocide. What has happened to people in places like Korea, North Korea, that is to say, China, Iraq, and other places in the world, that is genocide. What you claim is genocide here is a bullshit lie, as I told you before. You have suffered no genocide, and you are suffering no genocide. You want to portray the idea that you are, but you're not suffering genocide. You certainly don't look undernourished or worked to death or in danger of losing your life tomorrow. You're standing in front of a camera, giving your point of view in the freest nation in the world where you have freedom of speech to do so. And you claim that this is a genocide. Cry me a river, young woman. Cry me a river. You know, for all your soft words, and you just don't get it, do you? It still doesn't make you any more credible. It's a shame that your young mind has been wasted on this nonsense. That you have put yourself out here on social media and shown the level of ignorance that has been bred into your feeble little mind. If I have any pity for you at all, it is that you are that gullible, and that you don't realize that you are just a pawn in this game. A game that is not even controlled by who you think or what you think. So go on. Keep spreading your little lies, your little propaganda, or whatever else. You'll have people that'll buy into the nonsense. You'll have liberals and bleeding hearts and all kinds of progressives and socialists and your fellow blacks that will buy into it. But there's always going to be that few, no matter what color, whether they are black like you, or white, or yellow, or red, or light brown, or whatever color, that are going to have knowledge of the truth, and they're going to see right through your transparent little load of crap here. You know, it is a real shame. God created all the races on this planet. He created everything with life, whether it be man, woman, beast, insect, fish, even the plants and trees which live upon the good earth. And God looked upon all those things which He created, and He said, "It is good." He was pleased. He made your race a special race. He made my race a special race. He made every race a special race. Why? Because they are His children and He loves them, and God is no respecter of persons. And steps have been taken over the years to right the wrongs of the past. Steps have been taken over the years to heal the wounds, but people like you love to stir the pot of hatred and reopen the old wounds, because that's what you're about. You haven't got a clue in your little head, and it's a damn shame. I'm sorry that I even have to do videos like this, because I hate touching this subject almost worse than anything else. Because there are many of my good brothers and sisters of all the races, specifically the black race in this case, who will probably take me for a racist because I had to stand in defense of the truth. But the line has got to be drawn in the sand somewhere. We're either going to stand together on the rock of truth, or we're going to fall. So I'm not going to sit here quietly and let you espouse this pure crap to the delight of your fellow Black Lives Matter, Black Panther, black supremacist types and not say anything. I'm going to stand on the foundation of the truth. And people of all colors can either stand with me or they can stand against me. It's up to them. But it's made very clear in the Bible that Christ come to save the world. He came to save the world. He came and died on Calvary to save the world. Not just Israel, not just the white race, not just Indians, not just North American Native Americans, not just African Americans, as you so like to be called, but all the people of the world. And why did he do that? Because God loves all of his children. There's not one soul that lives that God did not create. Yes, even that of Satan, God created. But he gave us free will. Free will to use our brains to learn knowledge and to learn his word and to learn truth. Or free will to believe a lot of nonsense and to be propagandized and to be indoctrinated, as you have been, young lady. And it's a very sad shame. Because here you are, no telling how old you are. I don't know whether you're 20, 23, 25 at most. But you have had your mind infiltrated with the leaven of the scribes and Pharisees. And oh, how it has grown. And oh, how it is flustered and seethed hate inside you, and many with you, when it's not necessary. Because God loves you, and he loves me, and he loves all of his children. And there are people who choose to do things in this world like crime, or like to charge a police officer with his gun drawn. And there are also times when people such as your race or other races are picked on and oppressed. That is the way of the world, and it is a fact of life. And you are not trying to make it better. You are trying to play your violin of na 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 na. I have had it so rough. I've had it so bad. Yeah, you really look like you've had it terrible as you stand on this camera at different angles, wearing your nice clothes and your lovely necklace. I suggest, young lady, that you turn your life over to God. Because you mention hope and prayer in this, I suggest you pray to God for guidance and wisdom and understanding, and to be taken out of the darkness of deception which you are clearly now in. By doing this video, again, this is not something that I wanted to do. It's something I don't like to touch. I don't like to get involved in this political nonsense. But when I see a video like this, which absolutely makes my blood boil because of its sheer audacity and propaganda and bullshit lies, then I am moved to righteous indignation to say something about it. Because again, we stand on a foundation of the truth, and the line has to be drawn in the sand somewhere. With that said, my beautiful brothers and sisters in Christ, no matter what color you are, no matter what side of the tracks you came from, stay in our Father's Word. Study to show yourself approved. Use the tools afforded us to learn our Father's Word so that you can understand the languages. And stay away from crappy propaganda like this, which is meant to divide Christians, which is meant to divide peoples, which is meant to divide the nation along so many lines. And always pray for those that walk in darkness or in dimness, such as this one here. Pray for them, brothers and sisters, that they may be enlightened to the truth and come around. I'm very sorry, and I hope I did not offend any of my brothers and sisters. in having to do this. But I am very tired of seeing this stuff going on day after day after day. Bombarded with it, bombarded with it, bombarded with it. And if you cannot hang with the truth, then what good are you in the first place? So, if this has made you angry, then feel free to unsubscribe. All of my channels are about truth. And that is what I'm going to do, is speak the truth. This is not just my view. This is not just this woman's view. This is the agenda of light versus darkness, of good versus evil, of truth versus lies. Pick your sides, ladies and gentlemen, because it's growing late in the day. May God bless you all, and thank you for listening. This has been Just Thoughts.